Hey Firo fam, I just wanted to say, if you like the content that we produce, please give us a like, subscribe, and also click that bell button because it really, really helps the channel grow and more people know about Firo. Network layer privacy is another important component in preserving the privacy of your financial transactions. While Firo's privacy protocols like Lelantus or Lelantus Spark hide things on the blockchain, that means when you're looking up the blockchain, you can't actually get the data from it. Like you don't know who the sender is, the receiver, and amounts. There are certain metadata that can come from the network layer. And this is because, like, for example, if you make a transaction and somehow someone who is actively monitoring the network can tie that particular transaction to an IP address, that's really bad, right? Because that kind of removes a lot of the privacy that you gain from hiding stuff on the blockchain. So Firo has to not only solve blockchain privacy, but also network layer privacy. Before we go into how Dandelion++ works, I think it's important to cover how existing cryptocurrencies that may not have a privacy focus do their transaction propagation. And how that works is that when I make a transaction, I basically broadcast it to all the other peers that see me. And this is what we call a gossip protocol. I'm telling everyone about my transaction that is near me. And in turn, those other nodes that receive your transaction, they also gossip, right? So it's like, okay, let's say I broadcast to 8 people my transaction, and then that person broadcasts to 8 people that are close to them, or nodes that are close to them. Now you may think, well, how do I determine the source? But if a very sophisticated attacker is monitoring the network, he can see how the transaction propagates. It's kind of like when you drop a stone into a pond, you can see the ripples propagate. And just from seeing the ripples, you can kind of guess where that transaction originated from. So the same principle kind of applies to normal, I would say, transaction propagation methods in cryptocurrencies. Dandelion++ works by, instead of telling everyone about your transaction the moment that you broadcast it, what instead is that it would send that transaction to one other node first. So that means the whole network is not aware of it, only that one other node is aware of it. Once that node receives it, instead of telling everyone immediately, it actually rolls a dice. So let's say there's a 10% chance that you will tell everyone, and a 90% chance that you will tell one other node instead. So that works like, instead of one node going broadcasting to everything, it goes one node tells one other node. It rolls a dice. If it's a 10% chance, it will broadcast to everybody. But if it's a 90% chance, it will broadcast to only one other node. So that means, let's say if it broadcasts to one node, maybe at that point in time, only 3 nodes are aware of your transaction and are unsure, did this come from which one was the originating node, right? Because if A transacts to B and B sends to C, C doesn't necessarily know whether B was the original node that started the transaction or were there previous nodes before that. So it's this kind of obfuscation to show that, well, how many nodes are behind me? Where is this original transaction coming from? To even further make things more complicated is that once, let's say one of the nodes then hits that 10% dice chance to broadcast to everyone. Once that broadcast happens, the other nodes that were previously in stealth mode detect that broadcast and then broadcast the transaction itself. So it becomes like, it wildly propagates from different areas. So it's kind of like back to that pond analogy. Instead of seeing like one rock drop in and the ripples flow in, when one other node detects the ripples from this particular transaction, all of them start kind of broadcasting. So it's like ripples coming from different parts of the pond. So I guess that's an easy way to explain how Dandelion++ works. And the reason why it's called Dandelion is that when it's going through like that stealthy phase where it's only broadcasting to one other node, it's what we call the stem phase. And when it starts gossiping and telling everyone. It's called the fluff face, kind of like, the little stuff of dandelion flying here and there. So this is a really good way to protect network privacy, to hide your IP address, so that you don't need to use a VPN, you don't need to use Tor, and you still get a really good level of privacy. Obviously, that you can still use a VPN, you can still use a Tor to have additional network privacy, but even without it, you are getting a very high level. While Dandelion offers really good privacy from, I would say, casual observers, or even I would say like a determined, hacker or something like that, it may not protect you against, I would say, state-level actors, someone like, the US NSA, right? And to give that level of protection, you would need to do something even more, which is what we call the use of mixed nets. We are already looking into the implementation of mixed nets into Firo, in particular Meson mixed net, and we hope to give you more updates soon in how we're going to further improve our network layer privacy, even from the most advanced actors who may want to de-anonymize you.